Mana Eve, a Gwynne Schlagus, Baltic Quick, Cora. Welcome everybody to this, our first episode of Cora. We are delighted to welcome all the way from Scotland, our very stylish Dara O'Shea.
Thank you, Michael.
And Dara. Today are Kim Lancaster from London, Ontario, Canada, and Glenn Simpson from Toronto, Canada, and our producer is Alex Platter, also from Toronto. So would you all like to introduce yourselves? Glenn, do you want to start there?
Sure. Well, I am originally from Derry City. I now live in actually Montreal in Canada.
Oh, you live in Montreal?
Moved from Toronto. But I am delighted to be here and chatting with our friends around the world about the thing that we know and love, Irish dancing. So if you know what the word feis means and you've kicked your ass a few times, your own ass, you may be interested in what we're saying here today. And I'm delighted to have Dara.
Absolutely. Thank you. Dara, go ahead.
Hi, yes, I'm Dara, as you said, and Dara O'Shea. I am from Dublin, Ireland. My heart is always there, but I do live in Edinburgh, Scotland. Now, I've been here for 25 years, believe it or not.
Wow.
But all of my dancing world happens in Ireland or elsewhere. I don't do any dancing in Edinburgh. The old Scotland and Glasgow is the nearest, or the world, of course, in Glasgow. So yeah, Irish through and through. It's great to be here.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And we're on this weekend as well. So thank you for Kim.
I'm just Kim from Canada, and I'm delighted to be part of this podcast where we're entertaining, educating, and inspiring people who love Irish dancing. So thanks for joining us today, Dara, at this ungodly hour. That's very kind of you, actually.
I'm Michael Dillon. I'm from County Clare originally, a little place called Kilkishen, and I've lived in Dublin and in England, and I now live in Palm Springs, California, where I have a small adult class and I teach online around the world. So I think we're all CLRG here today, aren't we? But we will be inviting people from, or invite yourselves if you want to be involved, then please get in touch and we will have you on. So our subject today to start is kind of how important is the word Irish in Irish dance today? I mean, it's a global and has been now for centuries a global dance form. And how do we identify around the world? And is it a hindrance? Is it a help? So who'd like to kick off there?
Well, for me as an Irishman, moving around the world and traveling around the world most of my life, Irish dancing has been, the word Irish has sometimes at certain times been extremely impressive to people. And at other times, it has been a hindrance for me, to be honest, when it comes to studio rentals, noise, and if the remnants of Irish dancing scuffing your marley floor in your lovely studio. But other times, people, whenever, Dara, you'll remember a certain time whenever, if you mentioned Irish dancing, people would say, oh, the river dance.
River dance, yeah.
And they would do anything for a ticket back in the day. But so, it has obviously opened doors for us in many ways to many of the lovely places that we're able to go over the years. But also maybe close certain doors for me personally when it comes to certain studio owners not wanting their fabulous floor to be destroyed by these Irish dancers,
Do you think it pigeonholes us though? I've had people say to me, I'd love to do tap. And I go, well, I have a tap dance class. And they go, oh yeah, but that's an Irish tap dance. I mean, that's just for the Irish. That doesn't apply to us. And now that the Irish are only in Australia, I think, aren't they? They're not, or maybe Canada. But we're certainly not getting any of them here in the United States. And so our bread and butter traditionally is no longer out there. So how do we appeal to an audience that is not maybe the 4-year-old Irish kid anymore?
Yeah, I was thinking about this subject and, thinking, oh, for me, the Irish word, in your own heart is really, really important. I love just one, but listening to what you're saying, it's so true. When we were at school, it wasn't cool to do Irish dancing.
No.
And it was really when Riverdance came on the board, we were all doing this all our lives. We were all... Riverdance didn't change our lives, what we did, but it put it on the world map. And then people, all of a sudden, it was cool and, it was something good. But it is true, it wasn't cool to be an Irish dancer when you were going to school or whatever, especially when you had your rollers in your hair.
I
Certainly.
took great delight in all the fellas that used to tease me at school, brought their sons and paid me cash every week following Riverdance. You know,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true.
I actually had the same guys that were bullying me at school come up and shake my hand at that certain time in my life, which was kind of like a bit strange. Like, oh, I used to take the piss out of you for doing that. Now look at you now. I'm like, I didn't say nothing.
Exactly. It did change it.
Well, I know from here in Canada, when I would say I'm going to dancing lessons or whatever, people would assume it was that dancing with the swords. They thought it was Scottish dancing because that was the most popular at the time back then.
Yeah.
Until the advent of Riverdance, which Riverdance then exactly it was now, oh, you do that Riverdance stuff. And then even when I began teaching, the assumption was that you came into the class learning Riverdance. Do you know what I mean? Especially when I was teaching adults, and I was like, that's not how that works. We have to go back to the beginning. But having said that, I don't know if it's necessarily, like you said, a good thing or a bad thing to have that pigeonholing, because does it stop people from coming into class, do you think, especially maybe outside of Ireland, because they think there's a requirement that you have to be Irish? Have you ever encountered that in your dancing? Or
I have. I encounter it all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 4 Irishmen or people in Palm Springs. There's Irish Mike 1, I'm Irish Mike 2. There's a Damien and an Adrian, and then we have a Betty that's a waitress in a restaurant, but she lives in Desert Hot Springs, and that's it actually. So we're very much having to sell Irish. And, I was never exotic until I moved here, and suddenly being Irish is kind of, it's like, dating Mickey Mouse because you're involved in that Riverdance stuff.
Yeah.
So very exotic, but it also makes it elitist in a way, I think.
I've never heard Irish dance and exotic in the same sentence, I have to say.
I know, it's kind of shocking. It absolutely is kind of shocking that they all think you're able to run around the stage. And when are you performing? And I'm going, I haven't performed in fucking 40 years. It's just not happening. Sorry, But so how do we sell Irish dancing to this new audience? And is it, I mean, you look at the Gardner brothers now, and they have, I don't know, is it have a 1.7 million followers or whatever they have?
Is that right?
And they're not performing to Irish music.
Mm-hmm.
They never perform to Irish music.
Well, I remember the traditionalists, we'll call them, after Celebrity Jigs and Reels kicked off the RTU show that we did, that we performed to non-Irish music.
Right.
The traditionalists didn't like that at all.
No, not
certain people were like, "Oh, that's a load of old rubbish that over on there in the TV dancing to them songs." And I'm like, maybe that could be the way it could be moving forward. To try to Irish dancing is a very difficult art form. It is a combination art form, and I'll say art form because that's what I think. I think that I have had many students come from the world of dance to my studio and stood at the door with their mouth open. Because like, what the hell is this? Right. And I've been able to take them from, the modern ballet dancer to, which is not easy to take them to a champion Irish dancer, because there's lots of very legitimate differences in the dance language that you have to kind of bridge, as it were.
Ease and knees, more knees.
Huh?
Ease from the ballet.
Well, there, exactly. Then it starts there.
Yeah.
It doesn't end there, but starts there. But yeah, I think that for me, I've been able to say all those other dance forms that you do, more or less, we can take all that training, or at least for 3 or 4 of them, put them together, and you'll have Irish dancing. It is a difficult form. If you're ready for the challenge, you're up for the challenge, I'm ready to teach you.
So really what you're saying is we have to get past the stereotypes of what people think that Irish dancing is, because actually it's an incredible art form, and that's why when I was thinking about this subject, Irish, I said, well, it's an art form, it's not a sport, even though they train, our dancers train like sport, like a sport, but it's important to keep that. It's the connection to the culture and the basis, like the Gardner brothers. It is so cool to see Irish dancing done to different forms of music, but it's still Irish dancing. It's still, that's the art form. So it's hard to drop it, it's just
absolutely. I think that the word Irish has been used to describe our art form. It's also like a national identity, and I think that it's hard to differentiate. I guess it's hard to separate the word from the form for me now when I think about that, Dara, because Irish dancing is the shape, the form, the
Yeah.
language. You know,
And that's the stereotype, isn't it? Everybody goes, oh, they put their hands by their side, and like it's
Yeah.
like there's so much more to it,
there is indeed, absolutely.
Mhm.
And as we know,
are we lost in the wigs and the velvet and the makeup and whatever? And come St. Patrick's Day, everybody just wants the little group of ringleted girls walking in to the pub and doing their little reel. And then, like, what is the essence of Irish dance? What, like, you look at the Garden Brothers, is it just the arms makes it Irish dance? What makes it Irish dance?
Well, it gets frustrating trying to defend the whole thing, doesn't it? Because it's just, the wigs and that's just all a fashion and a style. But my God, the talent behind all of that, it's just, for us, it's hard to defend it, isn't it? It's like, you get frustrated.
Very good at hiding it, aren't we? What it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, what is Irish? Is it like Western European percussive dance, or, is it so connected with other dance forms that it really is other dance forms? It just is dressed that way. Dance to Planksy Davis at 76 or whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
hopefully never.
You're waiting for the introduction to finish. Like, I can't mark you to the very last bar to see you fit enough to actually get there.
Yeah.
But so what is Irish dance? Is it just a percussive dance form with the arms down by the side? Is that what we're doing?
Well,
here we have Ottawa Valley step dance, which comes from post-famine emigration from Ireland. People ended up in the East Coast because that's where the first boats landed.
Yeah,
have that amalgamation with the French Catholic of Quebec and the Irish immigrants, and you have this new development of Irish dance per se, but it's not. But it is the percussive that you're speaking about, but it doesn't have the same form, the body form, or the basement form that we have. But you can definitely see the obvious influence of
the connection,
pure form of Irish dance.
In the language of that Ottawa Valley step dancing, you can recognize our language, and I think that in recognizing what Irish dancing is, it is the expressive movement from the hips down. It is the rhythmic motions and the rhythmic patterns that we make. Typically, it's similar even to the Appalachian clog dancing that we actually worked with a little bit in river dance back at the very beginning.
Right, very similar.
And I also have worked with the Ottawa Valley step dancers in the Pulaski brothers, who are incredible dancers.
So you have Nathan Pulaski, who dances with Cherish the Ladies, because I've danced with them.
Yes.
And we all dance together. He does his form. It's the same rhythm. And but he'll dance with, with David Geaney and stuff like that, who never doesn't put his arms by his side, or, we're trying not to put our arms by our side when we're dancing. Right. Then we all come together and we're all doing the same steps. Like, so it is.
It is I mean, the language is there. It is connected. As Kim said, it comes from immigration. I suppose bringing our dance language to North America. And I think it's beautiful in that. I think David Geaney's awesome, and the boys there, the brothers, are fantastic. And we did a wee bit of work on another show called Dancing on Dangerous Ground, where it was trying to not alter the dance language, but develop it in a way where
Glenn, that was one of the most amazing shows ever.
Yeah,
but you know what happened to that show? It didn't have the line. Everybody got the stereotype. They wanted river dance. Then they just wanted to see everyone in a row doing this phenomenal dancing in a line. Yeah. And Dancing on Dangerous Ground tried to take it to another level again.
Yeah.
And it just didn't.
People weren't ready for it. I don't think, and the amount of work that went into it, and I mean the passion behind it, as we know,
and the talent in that show was incredible.
And from my role as dance captain was trying to help all these incredible Irish dancers understand how to take our language to a slightly different level. And coming from Colin and Jean's choreography, it was a great time for me. It was a exciting time, because we were actually physically changing the language a little bit and encouraging people to use this and that.
That's phenomenal.
As much as it altered what we were doing, it was still Irish dancing. And I think you're right in saying that it's not just the arms down by the side of standing in a line dressed in black. That's not what the Irish dancing it's not only that. There's also, of course, you think about our beautiful slipchicks, and it's not that. You think about our stunning reels, and people are flying around, and it's not, standing in a line with other people, and it's expression at a different level,
Yeah.
So then by that token, the adherence to tradition has been detrimental to, do you think, the growth of the form, or the how we express ourselves? Like, I know we rob a bit from ballet in certain moves,
quite a bit.
moves now that are ballet moves that are put into soft shoe. But obviously, do you find it detrimental that we have to have such a strict adherence because it's quote unquote Irish and Irish only, and we have to follow that stereotype? Like, are we maybe shooting ourselves in the foot? Like, pun intended, but yeah.
Isn't the arc, like, isn't the hands by the side? I know it was kind of traditional or whatever, but we keep the arms by the side for judging. It's like a competitive thing now.
Yes.
Where it's the way we are, it's one of the aspects we're judging.
Yeah.
When we're judging dancers, because if they were using the arms, it would take it to another level. That's where I think it's stuck in the.
Should we have, say, a competition in tandem with that? We have the traditional element of a world championship, but we also have the freestyle, say, where you can dance whatever you want and you can use whatever you want with your arms.
Yeah. And that's the flatley, the flatley competition coming into the world championships. I mean, even in 2 years, that's progressed too, and they just need to get more entrants and stuff like that. It was phenomenal,
I unfortunately didn't get the chance to see it. I'd love to see it.
Didn't either.
Yeah. So I know.
Do you want to explain that, Dara? What is that exactly for people that aren't CLRG?
Yeah, so it's it's a freestyle. So basically, it's the Irish dancers that enter the World Championships in the competitive side, the normal competitive side, and some of them have entered this freestyle competition, sponsored by Flatley, and they do. And the first year, I suppose it's going to get easier because the people who did it the first year had to take the risk of what does this mean. They had to interpret it and did it. And then last year, again, people, and I actually. There's so many places this can go. Do you know? I mean, the sky is the limit, and it's still taking what people have done. Pardon?
Is it solo or is it team?
Yeah, they're solos. Yeah, they're solo.
And they get to pick whatever music they want?
Yeah, absolutely. And do it. Like, I don't think there's any restrictions. I mean, I haven't entered anybody or been involved in it, so I've just seen it. But it's certainly something that had to be, developed.
And then with regards to that, I mean, the judging, is it still our CLRG judges?
Yeah.
Or is there an element being brought in where we have a ballet or a music person or some, I don't know, another expert?
Yeah.
Other than,
no, at the moment, it's still the CLRG. It's the same judges that are judging the.
And is there a place for doing that, for bringing in other?
Yeah, never even thought about that.
How do we even decide the form on that? Because we do have a very, what always timing, carriage, execution, steps. Wasn't that what we always were the 4 things we were supposed to judge under?
But they're not actually, they are actually Irish dancing, and then some of them are doing other forms of dancing incorporated into it. But my favorite thing, like, I watched some of my favorite people doing that. There was only a few entrants, but some of my favorite people, I almost wanted them to do a little bit more Irish dancing. It's interpreting Irish dancing to other music, to other forms. It's the mixture for me that that really works.
It makes it exciting.
That's what I like,
Yeah.
I thought, I mean, Dara and I just judged the All Ireland together, and I have to say it was probably my favorite week ever judging. We had a really, really nice time. I thought
we did.
I love that.
It was a great panel, but I did feel the whole, and I don't want to just stay on CLRG, but I thought it was kind of dated. I felt like we'd been watching the same thing for the last 30 years, the same background, and that's not a criticism of the World Championships and everything, but I was thinking, how do we make this relevant to non-Irish people on the other side of the planet? And I did have that question in my head leaving. Have we done, it's a bit like the Rose of Tralee, it's almost the same format year after year after year. And I think, is there a way we can make it more relevant, say to your Romanian refugee in California? How do we make those competitions, getting on a plane to Ireland? Is it necessary even to go on?
It's interesting what you're saying, Michael, though, because adult dancing even are people starting later in life, who are making the choice for themselves in Europe. I mean, it's absolutely booming in Europe, and
and it's fabulous, isn't it?
And it really is fabulous. But they are doing competitive Irish dancing and loving it. So it's very interesting.
That is very interesting.
Are the numbers waning? I mean, it's funny.
I don't really know. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go to Italy teaching a workshop for Jean D's, and like they all wanted to be Irish with red hair and freckles, and we're sitting in stylish Milan thinking, "What in the name of God, look at what you had," But so like, but are we like? I know schools are struggling around. I mean, the oldest school in the world is in San Francisco. The Healy School in San Francisco, I believe, is the oldest.
That's amazing.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
It really is.
The amount of Irish in the class is diminished to the point where most children now maybe are second or third generation Irish. So I like that in that fact, especially here in Canada, that's the only place I can speak from, is that most people look around and they're thinking, yeah, maybe my granny was Irish, but that's my only connection that I have. Whereas when I danced, generally we're first generation Canadians, so it was your parent or you were an immigrant and you danced to maintain this. So I do like the proliferation among different cultures now.
Do you know what's very interesting? And it's just occurring to me now that, say, take Scotland. So I don't do any dancing in Edinburgh, but really part of the reason I don't is there really isn't much dancing in Edinburgh at all. Yet
Right.
There's loads in Glasgow, like loads and different organizations, but it's massive in Glasgow, but that's still the connection to Irish in Glasgow, I think.
Yeah.
And there is a culture even for music in Glasgow, but in Edinburgh it's much more British. I think people would shoot me if they heard me saying, but it's much more it's not it doesn't have that deep root of Ireland in it. It's
The question, I think, is where St. Michael is, where you don't have that, where Dara was saying Glasgow is probably a huge immigrant population 3 or 4 generations, 5 generations ago, and not so much. But like in Palm Springs or in I don't know, in wherever, Romania or wherever, where do we build on the idea of you can be Irish without being Irish? Come do the dancing without.
Yeah, because I think if I lived in Glasgow, I would probably teach Irish dancing because you'd feel you could fill a class, whereas in Edinburgh, people say you should open a class, and I go, I don't think people would come. I think people would come for fitness as adults, but I don't think they would come. That's the way I feel.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with the key to this whole thing is that how do we attract people, or how do get people into the doors to a dancing class is the fitness level, especially for adults. Like, I mean, teaching an Irish dance fit class is easy to sell.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. And people are like, oh, I go to the gym every day. Then to come and do an Irish dance fit class, they crawl out the door. Like, oh my God. So it's like almost like, what do you call that? CrossFit. People have likened it to that. Maybe not quite as aggressively, crazy, but very, very challenging. So, the adults and people in their later years that even come back from shows, they need to get back into a class to stay fit, because there's nothing keeps you fit for Irish dancing like Irish dancing.
You actually underestimate how fit you were doing it. That's the thing. Yeah,
it's crazy, and you're like, oh, I know, I can still do it again. Then you get up and you're like, oh, hello.
My bugbear is always that every other dance form that I can see, you dance to the grave. You learn as a child and you dance to the grave. And we burn them out by 20. Yeah. And sure, I'm not getting up there to do a step. What should they all be talking about me if I got up to dance? And so how do we keep, if our numbers are down or we're in Edinburgh or whatever, and we have a core group of kids, then why do we constantly have to keep feeding that machine rather than extending that interest across their lives? And is it competition is doing that? Or what is forcing us to get rid of people at 20?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Because we pigeonhole too much to the competitive ideal and not allowed, like dancing on dangerous ground, a little bit of movement, or explored the sport in a different way to allow purely recreational or purely, for the artist's sake of it, or for purely fitness. Do you think we adhere too much to the competitive ideal?
I certainly do. I absolutely do. Yeah. I mean, we have you see them more than their own dads more often than not for like 15 years, and then they go off to college and you get an email saying thank you very much for and they tick the box for the lovely childhood memories, and that's it, and you never hear from them again. So that I really think that's something we need to address as an industry.
I 100% agree. I know that in ballet they actually assist you for the rest of your life as a ballet teacher. in many different ways, socially and for like programs and registrations and for training and insurance and all these things. That like the ballet community looks after its own. In the Irish dance community, when you're done competing, you're done. If you want to be a teacher, then yeah, here's your TCRG. Good luck. Run a business.
But you don't learn. It's developed. Like certainly our generation, Michael, whatever. When we went to learn to dance in Ireland, we went to dancing, and yeah, there was the competition, the feis. But you did your reel, your jig, your slip jig, your hornpipe, your jig, and you went to a feis and you did all those that were called your solos, and then you did a championship, and you learned dancing, you learned all the trad sets, you learned everything. But it slowly crept in. I know as a teenager and from going to the States or whatever, you do a light dance, a heavy dance, and a set dance all year round. That's all you do in Irish dancing. So it's only competitive. It's all geared towards competition, and and I think that there's an element of that which creates, like, all you do is those three dances all year round, and it's just it's literally the only thing that matters is competition. Not going to your dancing class, not learning dancing and the culture and so that I think that part of it has changed a lot.
I agree. Definitely for me too, it has changed. Growing up, we did every dance, every ceilidh. Essentially, there was enough of you were thrown into it, and then in the Thursday night you would be down the town in the wee house or in the wee theatre doing the shows for the visitors, and then at the weekend you'd be driven to another place to do a show, and it'd be very much there'd be a competition every other while, but it wouldn't be your dancing life would be still full without competition. But it was.
But it isn't about learning dancing for dancing's sake. It's just all about learning dancing to go to a feis. That's the only to win and to qualify. If you don't qualify for the world, it's the be all and end all. Your life is over.
It's great. It's a great goal to have. You're able to dance and perform on the world stage. But then, that should be in itself an achievement to get there. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, not everybody sees it that way, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't get a medal, or I didn't get this, and I didn't get on the podium." I'm like, "Well, kids, let's look at realistically, in the world, if you get in there, you've done an amazing job." But yeah, I think that has taken the focus off, Dara, the actual cultural benefits of the social aspect, and the fact that it's good for you not to win every time.
Yeah,
to become a more rounded person in your life. You go there and you get knocked down. You win this time, but then the next time you don't win. And that's what makes you a better, stronger person, I think.
Yeah.
Do you think what we're saying stops people from, growing dance in places where there isn't a strong, Irish culture or where it's feasible, like say where Michael is, say, because there would be a lack of Fashana to go to, or where say you are, you know what I mean? If we're coming out of teachers, if we're bred out of this idea of competition being ultimate, is it harder because we're stuck in that competitive vein to try and just do a class for a class's sake? Is that a mentality we have now? Because we're not, like you say, Dara, we're not doing dance for dance sake, we're doing it
yeah. Because in Ireland, they have, that my mother certainly taught in schools where it was part of the curriculum. And there was one feis a year where it was, I remember I used to accompany her, and she would go and they would use the Irish language and everything like that, and it's connected. It was connected to Feis Clia, which is the Dublin feis. And it was, these children just learned. Like, my mother started Irish dancing at school. And she learned from Rita English at school or whatever. But my mother was a really shy, really, really shy. She was one of 7. She talked about Irish dance saving her. It was like she learned to express herself when she went into a dancing class. And she came alive from this shy little 9-year-old. She just came alive, and she learned dancing. And that it became her life. But she wasn't a world champion or a champion or whatever. She just danced. And she met my dad at a ceilidh. They danced for dancing's sake, and neither of them were champion dancers. But I wrote a story for them when they were honouring my mother at the Oireachtas, the Leinsters. And I never talked about world champions or anything. I talked about her journey. And she used to go to a feis on a Tuesday night in a hall, and she had her polished school shoes on, and her mother used to sneak her out of the house because, her father was like, you do your exercise, you go to school and whatever. And her mom was a dancer as well. And that was her life, so, but she did it for the enjoyment and whatever. And we've just lost all of that. I think that's I talked about my cousin's daughter dancing today, and they're so competitive even now. And it still shocks me how the mom and the daughter, that just, because even when I was competing, I wasn't, we definitely had a rounded experience with dancing. We did the lot, it wasn't just all about competition. So.
Mm-hmm.
Question though, right? Do we need to have the word Irish?
But what would we call it if it wasn't called Irish dancing?
No, but you know what I mean? Like, has it become detrimental? That's the point. Has it limited some?
Would you go to a Mexican folklorico class, or would you walk into an Armenian national dance class? Would you, if it was on a local hall, would you go and sign up for that and hope to stay for years?
No, I would go to maybe a flamenco dance, but it's sexy, or a salsa because it might be easier. But
exactly, but like that, but flamenco doesn't have Spanish in front of it.
Exactly.
Like, would you just go into a hornpipe class? But that would be the same equation, salsa, right? Or
well, that's it. Nobody's ever tried it. I think have they ever just said,
come on, let me teach you a hornpipe?
But I did have a friend in San Francisco, and he was African American. He was a tap dancer and loved it. Was obsessed with the Gardner Brothers. And I said, "Should come down to a class." And he said, "Oh God, no, that's for you Irish."
See, problem, right?
And that really did strike me that you're exactly the type of person that we should be getting into our classes, and yet here we can't do it because of that Irish being a barrier. So,
cultural thing.
I came to this today, and I didn't even appreciate that it was a barrier. Do you know the kind of way that we were going to talk about this? But you're so right. It's like
when I taught adults in the gym, I just called it jig fit. There was no Irish in it. It was just jig fit.
Yeah, we know the tango is Argentinian.
Exactly. But people still say the Argentinian tango.
Yeah, the Argentinians, I think they do. Yes. But, so do we have to, and the reason we're drawn to those is because they're sexy, isn't it? Like, at the end of the day, how do we make Irish dancing sexy to get those adults into the class around the world?
Well, I think the first thing you have to say is it's the best workout you ever have, and you're going to have a decent body, then you come to your Irish dancing class.
And great big calf muscles, yeah.
Great big calf muscles and a grand tight arse.
Coming from Ireland and coming from Scotland or whatever, say I go to Philadelphia now, I'm judging the Oireachtas, and if you're on the adult competition, it'll be 50 in the adult championship. And I find that phenomenal. I'm going, these people are still dancing. It's like, oh my God. And they're so serious about it, and so, and just absolutely loving it. And I still find it a shock.
I don't know if I can do 3 steps of a reel myself. So fair play.
Well, I think that's a big ask.
Going back to topic again, if we can maintain that this is just a form of dance rather than a relegated cultural form, I do not think we would do better off if we loosen the grip of the word Irish per se.
Yeah,
I do, absolutely.
I think it's very valid. I think it's very interesting, food for thought, definitely.
Absolutely, and I think that it's a possibility. Anything's possible. Right?
So, and then
maybe even I'll have a class in Edinburgh.
There you go. Why not?
A sexy jig class in Edinburgh.
Dara, this time next year, Dara will have a huge class in Edinburgh. You never know.